Wait until you hear this, because it's one of those real-life nightmares that starts off so ordinary you'd never think anything strange was going to happen, but then twists and turns until you're questioning everything you thought you knew about your own home, your neighbors, and even the people in charge of supposedly protecting your property. So buckle up and make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss stories like this that will leave you shaking your head in disbelief. Because what happened when I returned early to my cabin was something I never thought I'd experience in a million years, and the fallout changed the way I view trust, community, and the thin line between security and invasion forever. It all began on a Friday afternoon when I decided, on a whim, to cut my workweek short and head up to my family's cabin in the mountains, a place I'd inherited from my father and treated like a sacred retreat from the chaos of city life, a sanctuary where I could breathe fresh pine air, sit by the fireplace, and feel, even for a few days, like the world made sense again. But when I pulled into the gravel driveway, suitcase rattling in the trunk and my dog Max wagging his tail in the backseat, I noticed something that immediately set me on edge. Curtains in the front window were drawn shut, though I had left them open last time, and there was a faint glow of light seeping through the edges, a light that shouldn't have been on because I always turned off the breakers before leaving to save energy and prevent accidents. So my heart began to thump as I cut the engine and sat there in silence, the cool mountain air pressing through the cracked window as I asked myself, had I somehow left things running, or was someone actually inside my cabin? I tried to convince myself it was nothing, maybe a trick of the light, but as soon as I stepped out with my keys jangling in hand, I heard the muffled sound of a television from inside, unmistakable, the low hum of voices and canned laughter from a sitcom, and every instinct screamed that I was not alone. And not in a good way, so I crept up the porch steps, Max growling low in his throat, and slid my key into the lock, but before I could even turn it, the door swung open from the inside and there stood a woman I'd never seen before, wearing my old flannel shirt like it belonged to her, holding a glass of wine from my cabinet, and behind her I could see the couch had been dragged slightly, blankets piled high as if someone had been living there for days, maybe longer. I froze, stammering out, "Who are you? What are you doing in my cabin?" And instead of panicking or apologizing, she narrowed her eyes and said calmly, almost smugly, "I could ask you the same thing," as though I were the intruder, and before I could even react, she pulled out her phone and dialed someone, muttering something about calling her friend to straighten this out, and within minutes a car pulled up, and out came none other than Karen, the infamous self-appointed enforcer of the Homeowners Association. The same neighbor who had once written me a 3-page letter about the shade of my shutters not matching the community aesthetic, the same woman who seemed to have eyes on every property and gossip on every resident, and before I could so much as demand an explanation, she was marching up my porch like a sheriff in a western, declaring loudly, "Excuse me, sir, what exactly do you think you're doing here?" As though I was the one trespassing, and when I told her plainly this was my cabin, my deed, my key in the door, she scoffed, waving me off, saying, "Don't lie, I know who actually belongs here, and you don't," and then, to my utter shock, she pulled out her phone and called the cops on me, claiming there was a dangerous man harassing her friend in her cabin, and my blood went cold because I realized she had planned this, orchestrated it even, letting her friend squat in my property under the guise of needing a place to stay. And now she was trying to flip the narrative so that I looked like the criminal. Within 15 minutes, 2 deputies showed up, lights flashing against the trees, and the next hour was a surreal blur of me producing my ID, deed copies I thankfully kept in my truck, and Karen shrieking about how she knew the rules, and that I was breaking law codes by being here unannounced, as if I needed her permission to walk into my own home. And the deputies, to their credit, seemed skeptical of her story, but the woman inside, the squatter, played her part well, pretending to be frightened, insisting she'd been invited, insisting I was unstable, and for a moment I could see doubt flicker across one deputy's face, which sent a chill down my spine because if this went the wrong way, I could be arrested, dragged off my own property while strangers drank wine on my couch. But just when things looked like they were tilting in Karen's favor, Max growled again and pulled at his leash, breaking free and darting into the cabin, barking furiously at a pile in the corner. And when the deputies followed, they discovered a stash of my belongings shoved into garbage bags, valuables from the cabin clearly being prepared to move out, jewelry, hunting gear, my father's old tools, all of it stuffed away, Undeniable proof that this wasn't some innocent misunderstanding but a calculated attempt to rob me blind. And suddenly the tone shifted, the deputies snapping at the woman to sit down, asking Karen why she vouched for her. And Karen, red-faced, stammered about helping a friend. And miscommunication. But it was too late, because the evidence was right there. And I stood outside trembling with rage, watching as the illusion of their control unraveled. The squatter was cuffed, taken away for trespassing and attempted burglary, but Karen, somehow wriggled out of immediate charges, claiming she didn't know what her friend was doing, though the deputies promised to file a report and told me to press charges with my lawyer. And as they drove off, sirens fading, I sat on the porch steps, staring at the quiet trees, realizing how close I'd come to losing not just my cabin but possibly my freedom if I hadn't had my documents, if Max hadn't uncovered the stash, if one deputy hadn't had the sense to look deeper. And in that heavy silence I made a vow. Karen was not going to get away with this, not after trying to steal my sanctuary and paint me as the villain. And over the next few weeks the twists kept coming. HOA meetings where she tried to slander me, neighbors whispering that maybe I was unstable, letters stuffed in my mailbox threatening fines for imaginary violations, until I dug into her past and discovered a trail of similar schemes, always hiding behind the wash shield, always helping friends who conveniently squatted or siphoned resources. And with my lawyer's help, and the deputy's report, we built a case that finally exposed her, not just to the board but to the entire community. And when the day came that Karen herself was dragged into court, sputtering and pale, and the judge heard how she'd weaponized authority to aid theft, the look on her face was the sweetest justice I've ever seen. And though it took months, I eventually restored my peace at the cabin, new locks, cameras, and a renewed sense of vigilance. But even now when I sit by the fire, I sometimes hear echoes of that sitcom laugh track, the ghost of intrusion, a reminder that even in the quietest places, you're never truly safe from those who feel entitled to what isn't theirs. And if you take nothing else from this story, let it be this: document everything, trust your instincts, and never underestimate the lengths to which a so-called Karen will go when she decides your life, your property, or your peace of mind is hers to control.